So on January 1st this year, I started training for my big race in 2019. That was about 10 weeks ago or so. However, my race day is still almost 12 weeks away. So at the moment, it's a little bit like Groundhog Day. I just get up, I train, I go to work and I sleep. And I do that every single day. Nothing much is too exciting with the training at the moment. And I'm starting to feel a little bit of motivation lag. So this episode is how to stay motivated when you're right in that grey zone, when you're in those dark weeks, when your race day seems like a long way away. So this episode is all about motivation. So let's dive straight in. So guys and girls from around the world, thanks again for joining us for another episode of Why I Run TV, and a huge thank you to everyone who got involved in the Yazo 800s, that episode we had last week about how to predict that perfect marathon time. I've had lots of friends and lots of comments from around the world from people who've had a go at it, and it'll be fascinating to see how they go with their marathon training and whether those Yazo 800s are actually an accurate predictor of time or not. So what an amazing couple of weeks of running it has been all over the world. The Ultra Trail series is in full swing with the events now rolling off every couple of weeks. And this week, this Sunday, we've got the first major marathon of the year coming from Tokyo. It's going to be great to follow that online and to look to see how the pros go and all those amateurs around the world. It is a wonderful event. My brother did it a few years ago and I've got a few mates going over there, so I'm going to be wishing them all the best. And of course, some of you may have come across this, some of you may not have, but the 27-year-old indoor 1500 meter world record has been broken. Finally, Hesham El Garouge's time has gone. It stood for 27 years. It's one of the oldest records in track and field, and it was amazing to see that broken just by a couple of hundredths of a second. As I said at the beginning of the episode, I've got a big event coming up this year, and it's about 12 weeks away or so it seems like a long way away. The training that I began on January the 1st or around Christmas time seems like an eternity ago as well. So at the moment, I'm finding myself just in a bit of a training rut. It's just week after week, the Ks are going up, the volume's going up, but I really can't seem to get excited about that race day that's coming up in late May because it just seems like such a long way away. And I find this is often a problem that a lot of athletes have, is that we train for 20 weeks or 16 or 20 weeks or so, and it seems like an incredible amount of time. We get that really big excitement when we jump online and the entries come out and we race to fill out the entry form and we click enter, and then we get the confirmation that we're in the race, and it's just amazing. The excitement that goes through our body is awesome. We're super pumped for it. And then of course we start to talk to our coaches and our training friends about putting a training group together, and we start our training, and again, enthusiasm is super high. Everyone's excited, everyone's pumped, every training session seems like to be absolutely perfect, and you're just thinking, I'm going to smash this goal, I'm going to smash this A race, it's going to be a breeze. And then week after week, you get into the routine, you get into the program, and suddenly daily life takes over, and you get up and you train and you go to work, and then you've got family and kids and all those kind of things to look after. And you can start to feel a little bit of motivation drain. And it's a really important time of your training block as well, that middle session, that middle stage of your training block, because it is a big time. It's 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks. And if you can keep your motivation high, then you're on the way to actually achieving the goals that you want. So this episode today is all about keeping your motivation levels high. And there's lots of different ways that people do it. I know some of my friends, they put quotes up on their bathroom mirrors so they can look at them every single day. Some people like to write down a bit of a mantra and stick it somewhere in the house. Some people like to look back through their finishing photos and even put on a couple of those finishing medals and have a bit of a look at them. But today I want to talk to you a little bit about a completely different way of staying motivated when you just feel like the energy levels are going down a little bit. And this method is not fancy at all. It's very simple. It's not glamorous. It's not Instagram worthy or anything like that. It's the most basic way of keeping yourself motivated. And here it is. Reading as many running books as you possibly can. Getting your hands on them, begging for them, borrowing from mates and buying them if you can, doing whatever you can to get your hands on some of the greatest motivating running books that we can find. And so today in this episode, I want to show you 5 of my favorite running books that I think will motivate you and could potentially help you get to that start line. Now this is just a personal list. There are hundreds of running books that I will have left out, but these are 5 that I've just come across in all my years of running, and they're kind of my go-to books whenever I feel like I need a little bit of a pickup. These are the books that I really enjoy getting into. So let's start with number 5. Number 5, we'll go 5 down to 1, and number 5, I don't even know how it sort of makes the list, but it does. It's not even a running book per se, but it's a book that I think has huge impact and huge implications for running people. And this is it. It's the book called Sacred Hoops, and it's all about Phil Jackson and his legendary team, the Chicago Bulls, in the late 80s and the 90s. So if you were a child who grew up watching sport in the 80s and 90s, you know the Michael Jordan era, you know the Chicago Bulls era. They won triple NBA rings twice, so 6 titles when Michael Jordan was there. And the coach at the time was Phil Jackson, and he had the biggest job in sport, was putting together all of the greatest basketball players with the biggest egos and the biggest financial gains as well, and putting them into a team that seemed to work for each other. So, Sacred Hoops. So the reason I put it in at number 5 is for the coaches out there, the people who organise running groups and running squads and coaching squads. Coaches have a big task. A lot of coaches work for free and they try and build a team ethic. And we think of running as an individual sport, but really we often train together in groups. So there's a lot of egos there that can be around. There's a lot of people with different lifestyles and different values and things like that. So for the coaches out there, this is one for you. Sacred Hoops. Get your hands on it if you can. Even though it's not a running book per se, it's not even really a basketball book. It's really just a book about generating team spirit and teamwork and being able to work together and train together and have a single goal and assist each other in actually getting that goal. So that's my number 5, Sacred Hoops. If you can get your hands on it, it's an amazing read. Okay, so number 4, Running with the Kenyans, a very popular book. A great book that gives you a bit of an insight into what it's like training with the greatest athletes on the world. Written by a journalist who is a bit of a runner himself, and he heads over to the Rift Valley in Kenya, which is, I guess, the home of the greatest runners in the world, the Kenyan runners. And he spends some time with them and he learns about the way that they approach that Kenyan mindset to running, and he tries to use their thinking and the way that they approach their running to make himself a better runner. It's a great read. There's a chapter in here which I absolutely love. It's one of my favourite chapters. It's when he goes to the Kenyan cross-country World Championship trials, which quite frankly seems to be the most difficult and the most challenging race there is in the world, potentially the fastest race in the world to try and make the Kenyan cross-country team. So yeah, Running with the Kenyans, a great book, a great read. Number 3, and I don't think there's a more topical book around in the world at the moment than this one. The 2-hour marathon. Nike had that project a couple of years ago when they set up Kipchoge and a few other runners to try and break the 2-hour barrier. And this book, although it's not about that event as such, it is about what it takes to run, as it says, the impossible marathon, the quest to break the 2-hour marathon, which I think is something which every single one of us hopes will happen soon, and we hope that we're there to see it or watching it on TV. One of the things that the author talks about in this book is trying to unlock our mind and therefore unlock our potential. And I think as an amateur runner, for every amateur runner out there, we know that in certain races or in certain training sessions, sometimes it's our brain, it's our mental state that actually gives up before we physically give up. And this book challenges that. It looks at how coaches and how trainers around the world are trying to unlock the brain. And they believe that when you can unlock your outlook on your potential, that records such as the 2-hour marathon are bound to go. And so I think every amateur runner would love that. Even if we can just get 2 or 3% stronger in our head, 2 or 3% stronger in our brain, the potential that we have then as a runner is astronomical. So it's a great read for everyone who loves the marathon, for everyone who can't wait to see that 2-hour marathon get broken, then this is the book for you. And this is my number 3 in my list. Number 2, and the only fictional running book on my top 5 list, and it's one that was an incredible cult classic in the late 70s and early 80s, particularly in America. So this is called Once a Runner, and it's not a true story, it's completely fictional. It's probably based on a few true runners. And I just stumbled across it one day when I was buying some other running books on Amazon, and this was down the bottom as one that you might be interested in buying. So, as I said, it came out in the late 1970s, and the author used to sell this out of the boot of his own car. He self-published. He would sell it to high school runners and college runners, And bit by bit, it became a cult classic. It started to get handed down from senior runners at high school and university to the freshmen who would come in and to the junior runners. And it was kind of like a rite of passage. They had to read this, they had to understand it in order to, be part of the cross-country team or the track team and things like that. So the fictitious story, it basically makes every amateur runner in the world just dream of what it would be like to be a professional runner. Dream of what it would be like to dedicate 7 days a week to a single goal, whether that's Olympic selection or whatever. But as always, there is a huge amount that we can take from it as amateur runners because, often we do think about running, when we're at work and things like that. We do think about it when we're in the car, and sometimes we think in a professional way. We have those same sort of mindsets. We dream of that finish line. We dream of what it's like. And as I said, if you can get your hands on it, it's a fictitious book, but still incredibly valuable and a bit of a change from all the non-fiction that we see out there with running. So my number 2 on the list is Once a Runner. So here we are, we're down to my favorite running book of all time, and I've got a little bit of a feeling that it might be a bit of an unknown book for a lot of people out there. I certainly didn't know about this book until I stumbled upon it. And I have left out a huge amount and a lot of famous books. I've left out Born to Run, I've left out Run or Die, I've left out Eat to Run, and all those great books, 17 Hours, the ones about Ironman training, The Iron War, the Dave Scott and Mark Allen story, which is a huge favourite of mine. I've left that one out as well. So there are hundreds of other running books that I could have put in, but this one is my favourite, and it's a bit of a personal favourite of mine as well because it takes me back 20 years to when I used to run high school cross country, and it's called Running with the Buffaloes. Basically the story, it's part tragedy, it's part biography, and it's part training diary as well. It follows the University of Colorado cross country team, the Colorado Buffaloes. It charts their 1998 season as they aim and as they strive towards winning the Division I cross country championship in America. And it charts their year, and it follows 10 or 12 athletes in there, and it goes through all their training, and it's a bit of a journal in some ways, but it's an absolutely fascinating insight into what it's like to run 160 or 170 kilometers a week when you are still in your early 20s, what it's like to compete at that highest level, and what it's like to train in a big group. So I absolutely love it. It's one that I go to quite often. It's Running with the Buffaloes. I'd love to know what you guys think of it, whether you've heard of it, and your thoughts on it. As I said, it's a real personal choice because I used to run a lot of cross country. It's my favorite type of running, and I absolutely love it. It's a bit of a cult book. It's, the photos are in black and white. Everything's printed in black and white, so there's nothing glossy or fabulous about it, but it just seems to have that effect on me that when I read it, I just feel like I'm one of these runners. I feel like I'm part of the team. I feel like I'm on the journey with them. So there's my number 1, Running with the Buffaloes. Okay, so there we go. There's my top 5. And as I said a couple of times, I've left out a huge variety of running books, some great books. I'm sure some of you are sitting at home and saying, well, you haven't thought of this one, you haven't thought of that one. And I can assure you I have, but it's very hard bringing it down just to a final 5. And for some reason, these are the ones that motivate me. I've got these at the moment on my bedside table. So what I'd like to know from you guys as a bit of a weekly challenge for this week, I'd just love you to put a comment in the section below. Tell me what it is that you love to reading. Tell me some of your favorite running books. I'd love to know of some new ones that I haven't heard of because I'm always looking for new ones. So send us either a picture of the front cover or just put a little comment in the description below, and I'd love to know what it is that motivates you and what some of your favorite stories are. Okay, so there it is for episode 7 for season 2. A very simple episode, but one I've really enjoyed bringing to you. I'm a big reader anyway. I love just to sit down and read through a book. And so my biggest combination of reading books and reading books about running is kind of perfection and kind of a dream for me. So as I said, let me know what books you are into. Whatever you have coming up this week in your training, whether it's starting to become race time, good luck with it. So have a great week, train hard, eat well, and get plenty of rest. And we'll see you in 7 days' time for another episode of Why I Run TV. Have a great week.